walking down the middle of the West Hobart skate bowl. It was built in 1980 and it's showing its years. The concrete in different places is a lot rougher than it used to be, so it's not as easy to ride anymore, but this used to be the Skeg Central of Hobart. Now, it's not as pretty as it used to be, or maybe it is in a different way, but whatever it is, it has more than enough personality to hold its own. A stratum of limestone was discovered at the site in 1814. Colonial authorities used convict forced labour to mine it and build kilns to process it. By the late 1830s, the quarry was 40 feet deep. The bottom filled up with water and it became known as Baker's Pond. This photo from 1910 shows the quarry before it became a rubbish tip, when it was filled in with trash and rats. 70 years later, the hole was backfilled and the skateboard bowl built. There are few places in Hobart that feel more like Hobart than West Hobart. Only 6,000 people live in the suburb, but its impact on the city as a whole outweighs that. Even if you don't live in West Hobart specifically, many citizens travel through regularly. There are a dozen different ways to enter and exit. In the minds of many people, it might be hard to explain where the boundaries lay. But you do know when you're in the middle of it, because it feels like you're inside an amphitheatre. The foothills of the mountain falling down into the city below. This 1894 photo shows the suburb in transition, still finding its form. This painting, attributed to David Cox, is of Lansdowne Crescent in England, in the city of Bath in the county of Somerset. The well-known row of buildings was designed by John Palmer and constructed in 1793. It is one of the finer examples of Georgian architecture, a style that was very much aspirational when Van Diemen's Land was being established. This is, of course, how Lansdowne Crescent got its name. Of note, Gourlay Street used to be called Bath Street. Colger was the name of a large sandstone residence on Cavill Street. That house was once part of a much larger property, a big piece of land that has since been subdivided. Today the name Colger is the official name for the train park. With no train lines running through the suburb at any time, the playground was named instead after some of the children's exercise equipment that had been placed there. A steam tractor for children to play on, that was replaced with a wooden playground that looked like a train. Most recently, the plastic shape that vaguely resembles a steam engine. The large weatherboard building on Lansdowne Crescent is called the Institute, and it was built in 1880 on a wide open paddock. There was a time when the residents of West Hobart considered breaking away from the Hobart City Council and forming their own local government. If this had have happened, the Institute would have acted as the first town hall. The Institute Hall was the fanfare focal point when the tram line opened in 1914. This map from 1927 shows in red the route across the suburb, running from the train station all the way through West Hobart to the corner of Hill and Archer. It was later extended down Malafont Street. Sunshine or snow, the trams accelerated suburban growth. Goulburn Street and Cavill Street met at such an acute angle that the tram driver had to proceed past the junction and then change end in order to continue. The unusual track configuration led it being known as the Wire, and in time a shop was named the Wire Store. The main streets of West Hobart are littered with the relics of corner stores. This early sketch by A.T. Fleury is of the Albemarle, built in 1841, one of 3 pubs that used to be on Goulburn Street. Now a home, Only the Albemarle survives. West Hobart is dotted with deconsecrated churches, the most imposing of which is St John the Baptist. The Gothic building was completed in 1856, a city landmark that was sold into private hands in 1998. Further up Forest Road is Goulburn Street Primary School. The original building opened in 1887, but it mysteriously burnt down in 1942. The 1967 bushfires killed 62 people, injured 900, and left 7,000 homeless. A number of properties in West Hobart were destroyed on that day, many of which were at the very top of Forest Road. Today, when you reach the pinnacle, you come to a fork in the road. If you take the left, you'll eventually get to where the official road ends. But the old road continues, taking you past the foundations of lost buildings and beyond. The dog and I are up here on the precipice of the Hobart tip. There's all sorts of things going on down there, a bit of recycling, a bit of dumping. Back when I was a kid, you used to be able to drive up here and it was free to enter and you could chuck in anything. Didn't matter what it was. It could be dead animals or old bits of cars, anything from your house, paint, oil, just tipped it into the ground. Things are very different now. Obviously there's a big recycling centre and all the trash gets separated into different types. There's a reason for that. Not only is it better for the environment not to just pour everything into the soil, but this tip here is running out of space. Eventually there's going to be no more room to dump trash for Hobart, and a new rubbish dump will have to be built somewhere else. Now, the lifespan of this rubbish dump is not exact, but it will have one. At some point, they're not going to keep putting rubbish up further and further, right up until you get to the top of the mountain there. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So when they're done filling in the tip, at some point in the future, they'll have a whole area of fairly flat land that they can use. Now, what that land will be used for, well, that's undecided. Could be a number of different things, but it'll probably most likely be some sort of recreational area. Who knows? Hey dog? Could be a dog park. A number of colonial buildings were built on Knocklofty. People lived in them and worked from them, but most were demolished even before Black Tuesday. More recently, other buildings have been disengaged with. At the top of West Hobart is the former Pacific Vista. The 60-room hotel stopped operating almost 3 decades ago. Now owned by out-of-state investors, today it is something of a private residence. Now the dog and I are up here in Knocklofty communicating with nature. There's this cubby house here. Well, we're not really here to look at that, although it is pretty cool. We're here because this area that we're in, what do you got, dog? A Banksia. We're here because this area used to be a quarry. Now, it doesn't really look like it now, but it was, very briefly, a couple 100 years ago. It was mined for gravel and other building materials, but now when you look at it, there are very few clues because nature takes over and things get washed away in time. But there are spots like this, not only in Knocklofty and West Hobart generally, but all over Greater Hobart. In order to build the city, they had to quarry the city. For a long time, people wondered if a road within Knocklofty would be built, joining the top of Forest Road with Warona Avenue. That never happened, but instead we are left with a robust walking track, of which everyone is free to survey the city. At the opposite end of West Hobart, the suburb ends at Malafont Street. Halfway up is Lower Jordan Hill Road. There is the opening of a road that was never completed. Jordan Hill Road was meant to run from the bottom of West Hobart all the way up to the top of Mount Stewart, but the middle section was never built. Instead, temporary names were assigned to the streets, Lower Jordan Hill Road and Upper Jordan Hill Road. Eventually the council accepted that the streets would never be joined. The lower section kept its name, but the upper section was renamed Gillen Crescent, after the headmaster of Mount Stewart Primary School, Bernard Gillen. This honour was given unusually while he was still alive. 20 years ago, when the name was changed, I got my old man to write to the council and request the old signs. Hobart was settled at Sullivan's Cove because of the fresh water available there. Everyone knows about the Hobart rivulet, but what is mostly forgotten is that there were two rivulets terminating at Hunter Island, the second of which runs today through pipes below the Brooker Highway. In this map from 1837, we can see where Providence Valley Creek ran. Today it remains almost hidden in a West Hobart glen. Another graveyard is in Friends Park. Today the headstones have been pushed off to the side. For many years a cypress pine grew in the middle of the old Quaker cemetery, its roots feeding into the earth amongst the bodies in the coffins. When the tree died, Tasmanian artist Roland Gabatel used a chainsaw to carve the four main branches into four figures, each releasing birds to the heavens. The Wesleyan burial ground on Hill Street and Hamilton Street saw its last burial in 1872. In 2016, some workers were adjusting the foundations of a home. Their shovels uncovered the skull of a human. So we're standing up here in one of these back parts of West Hobart that the average punter probably doesn't go to very often. Why would you? There's nothing here. All we've got here is a bunch of native flora. Got the big telecommunication tower up there that we probably all use every day without realising it. But this land behind me, well, it's not completely natural. It used to be a quarry, and then it was a brickworks. And that brickworks was used to build much of the built environment of the city that we're currently standing in. There's not really any evidence of it though. Not when you walk around. I mean, if you look really closely, you can see, but there's no big fuss made about it. But that's generally true of industrial locations in the whole world. Once they stop being used, they kind of get washed away with the passage of time. They have a function, and once that function is no longer there, there's no aesthetic reason to really remember they were ever there. But the brickworks definitely does live on, because without it, a lot of the buildings in Hobart would not look the way that they do. Hey man? Want to go down? Come on. There had already been a quarry at the end of Arthur Street in 1882, when 3 kilns were cut into the cliff face. In 1893, the facility was upgraded with the construction of Hoffman-type brick kilns and a 40-metre high chimney stack. By 1916, the facility was producing 200,000 bricks per week, twice the capacity of any other factory on the island. In 1965, the factory closed, and 3 years later, the site was demolished. For many years, the official border of the Hobart City Council ran along Knocklofty Terrace. Where the street intersects with Poets Road, there remains a souvenir of this. Outside the house that is missing its pitch roof, there is a piece of sandstone that looks almost like it fell off the property's front wall. A boundary marker. When exactly it was placed there is a mystery, and what is written on it has been vanished, taken away by the deluge, worn away by time.